So hello everyone, we're gonna start over again. Thanks for your patience while we went through some technical difficulties. To remind everybody, my name is Rob Kinsley. I am the chairman of the board of directors of the York County History Center. Thank you all for joining us for this event. To remind everybody, we have people here in our live audience, and hopefully we have people joining us for Facebook Live. Hopefully this is a two-way event. Our goal is to give you an update on the progress we've been making towards this dream of bringing history to the center and creating a new York County History Center museum and campus in downtown York. Please feel free to ask questions. We have a presentation. We'd like to give you information, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Our process has always been improved by the information we've been getting from our members, from the public at large. If you're in the audience, just raise your hand and we'll ask you to ask your question. If you're joining us from Facebook Live, just feel free to make a comment in the comment post with your question. We'll collect those. We'll try to answer as many questions in real time as we go through the presentation as possible. If for some reason, either live or a Facebook question we can't get to right away, at the end of the presentation we'll have a Q&A and we'll collect those and we'll try to answer them then. So we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who can see, the image on the screen is where we are with a view of the outside of the building here at the end of concept design. And I'll tell you where we are in this sort of long schedule towards opening. For those of you joining us, that view is looking from the corner of Philadelphia and Pershing Street, looking at the potentially renovated Med-Ed steam plant or the new location for the York County History Center. If we could go to the next slide. Not only is our goal to create a new history center, history museum, but to also really anchor it as a place to be in downtown and create a history campus. So the image you see on the screen stretches from Market Street on that side through Philadelphia and beyond. And it creates a history campus that runs from the Colonial Complex all the way along Cadorus to the new History Center in the renovated Med-Ed steam plant. That red line represents the entire history campus. The History Center currently owns or controls the vast majority of that area that will enable us to create this history campus. The blue box in the middle, if you can see that, is the one piece that we don't currently own or control. That's the area that many people refer to as Lafayette Plaza. It's largely a parking lot. It's currently owned by the General Authority, and we're working with them to figure out how to partner to make this whole history campus come together. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a graphic which shows what our timeline is from the starting the strategic planning for this process all the way through the opening. So the strategic planning that led this organization through its transformation and pondering change and brought us to the idea of creating this new history center started many years ago, but the last round of our strategic planning process was in 2016. Coming out of that through the pondering change document came with this idea that the public largely supported of consolidating and moving to this new location, which is the steam plant. That's sort of this pre-planning. So as part of that work, we started to figure out if that location, in concept would work. We did a study phase to figure out through fundraising feasibility whether we could potentially raise the money to build it. We started a campaign. We looked at the economics, not only of what this transformation, what its impact would be on the organization, but also what the positive effect would be on our community from an economic standpoint. And we went through all the environmental work to make sure that this site would work for the new museum. We then started the concept design phase, right? And that was both the architectural part of what would the building do and what would the storyline and the exhibits possibly be. That's what we've been working on over the last 2 years since Pondering Change. And we've wrapped up the concept phase just in the last month or two. And we're going to show you what those plans look like, both the building and the exhibit and the storyline. Now, what's still ahead of us between now and sometime in 2020 is to continue to finish the design work, that project design for both the exhibit and the building design, and to construct the project. Our hope is to get through those things in the next 24 months or so and look at a potential opening of the new center later in 2020. So that's where we are in the grand timeline. I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan Weary, to Patty to talk about some more detail in funding. Does anyone have any questions so far about the timeline or anything I've talked about thus far? Okay. I'm going to invite Patty up to talk about funding.
Good afternoon, I'm Paddy Rooney, I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors, and I'm going to, as Rob said, talk to you a little bit about our funding stream, our budget, and how we are doing. As you know, we had set an original funding stack that came out of our materials, and a large part of that was the capital campaign that we undertook within the community. We set a goal for that capital campaign of $5 million. We're very pleased, of course, to announce that we've actually exceeded that goal. We've actually reached a goal of $6 million, and that's a remarkable effort, and it shows, I think, remarkable support on the part of the community as a whole. So for that, we're very, very grateful. I want to particularly thank John Schmidt, who's sitting in here, who was our honorary chair, who's sitting in our audience here, Joe Crosswhite and Tony Campisi, who were our honorary chairs for the work as well, and did the stupendous work leading us in the capital campaign. We also applied to the state for a redevelopment assistance capital program funds. It's called RACP for short. And as a result, we did ask for $10 million, but we were awarded $7 million, which in and of itself is a wonderful amount, because that was the largest gift, the largest grant given to any entity throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we're very grateful to the governor and to our legislative delegation for all the work that they helped us do in regard to that effort. That brings us to $13 million. We are obviously short. Our goal, as you can see, was a total goal of $20 million. So we are obviously at this point $7 million short. How are we going to make that up? We're going to try, first of all, working on a number of grants. Grants provide us with an opportunity to specify certain areas within the overall development of our building and exhibits, to be able to seek specialized funding that individuals and corporations and entities might give us. And so we're looking for another $1 million in that effort. We're also going to apply for a number of tax credits. Now, tax credits come in various forms. We are going to go after 2 forms of tax credit that are specific and will help us, we believe, directly. The first of these, of course, is historic tax credits. Now, historic tax credits are accessible to us, of course, because we are using an historic building. We're revamping a building, and as a result, we should be able to apply for these tax credits. That's money that an entity is able to utilize through a tax program that they have for themselves, and we end up receiving the funds. We've applied for that program, historic tax credit situation, and we hope to be able to know by about May where we stand. That's going to be roughly an additional, we hope, up to $2 million. There's a second form of tax credit that we're after as well. It's called New Market Tax Credit. This is another form of tax credit that entities can use and take. We already have a partner who's interested in that program to help us. That could be potentially anywhere between another $2 and $3 million, we would hope. So we are going to look for historic tax credits and new market tax credits. Both of those, however, of course, are uncertain. We don't really know yet whether we will be eligible. We are making application. We are seeking that type of tax credit program. We don't know, and we won't know until a little bit later into the late summer, perhaps early fall, where we stand on some of those areas. We are also seeking funds from other entities that we've spoken with in the past and hope perhaps they'll fund us. We are optimistic that we will reach our goal, our overall goal of the $20 million. We believe that the support that has been given to us to this point has been wonderful, and we believe we can continue to build on that. We believe that there are a number of other entities, some other non-profits, some other government agencies that might look again to support specific projects within the overall development of our program. So some piece might appeal to them, whether it's in our archives, whether it's in some of our displays, and so on. So we would hope to be able to do that. I think in summary we should be able to say that those areas that we have control over, those areas that we believe that we can move along, are moving along. There are some areas that are outside of our control. Applying for these tax credits is one of them. But we believe that we are moving forward because we continue to push and are optimistic about the end result. In summary, I think that while we have not yet achieved our goal, we are moving closer. Each day we get additional support, additional ways in which we believe the community is showing its overall recognition of what it is we're trying to do here. So we believe that in the end we will make our goal. We believe that such optimism is not ill-founded, but in fact is going to prove to be realistic. And I think in summary, we should thank everyone for the work they've done so far. It's been a remarkable effort in really what has been about a year's worth of work to even get to where we are now, at the $13 million mark, with a lot of work done to lay the groundwork for that additional 7. We are going to make this. We will do this. We believe that this is going to prove valuable for the community, and we will pull the funds together in the end. Thank you. Are there any questions for that? Thank you. Jonathan, you're on.
All right, thank you, Patty, for making that seem so attainable. I'm Jonathan Ware, I'm the Director of Design at Warehouse. I'm going to walk you through the plans as they've been designed up to this time, and hopefully give you a little bit of structure about what's going on, what it looks like, where all the spaces are happening. There's 2 efforts simultaneously happening in design right now. There's the design of the building, the renovation of the spaces, the existing buildings there, the new adaptations or the new additions to the buildings. And there's exhibit design, which somebody else will talk about right after this. And so Rob already talked about the view earlier was at North Pershing and East Philadelphia to the original buildings. The entry to the new building is going to be off North Pershing due to kind of how the existing building's set up. The original warehouse building that sits against East Philadelphia is a 3-story masonry building, and then the Med Ed building, if you will, is back here. Now the parking is in the back, and there's already existing parking there if you've been to the site. Many of the challenges that we have is right now, if you look at the addition to the space, or the void, if you will, there's one void where we're doing an addition piece. There's another piece where there's going to be potential future expansion as the site of the space goes. This is actually pointing east. There's an existing shed building in the back that we're trying to maintain as we try to keep everything under budget, as Patty was pointing out earlier. But essentially with the tax credits that we're now going after and where we're moving towards is a full rehabilitation of everything that's existing. And so that is retuck pointing all the buildings, which means cleaning up all the masonry, to fixing all the windows, replacing everything back to time sensitive. And the new additions that we put in there have to be a little bit contained, a little bit pulled in from the existing building, and it can't look like the existing building. So it has to be really markedly different, so you can tell very clearly what's new and what's existing. And so the new building, as it's been designed so far, is within those bounds, except that the height may have to become down a little bit. We may need to scrunch it in kind of the east and west ends. And the intent is to create kind of an industrial building that complements the existing, but and so by that I should say is that the glass and steel makeup of the new building is in contrast to the masonry building that is existing. And so if we go to the next slide, this is kind of how the overall building sits in the site. We're looking at kind of the first floor plan. And if we actually move forward to the next one, it'll be a little zoomed in version of the first floor plan. So North Pershing is still down here, and East Philadelphia is over here. What we're looking at is the main floor plan plus the basement of the existing warehouse. And so we're tucking in as tightly as we can a new event lobby space, which is going to be kind of the grand hall, new kind of exciting entry for the York History Center. And just to kind of give you kind of a big kind of viewpoint, if this space becomes kind of the event space, the main gallery, which is 2 stories, this is the kind of main floor, sits over here. There's a temporary exhibit gallery that sits against sits against Philadelphia. Some service and support kind of on the east end of that building. Some mercantile space that sits just off the lobby to help activate that space, so coffee, maybe some food. Warming kitchen that will support event space. And another large component will be this library space. So to think about the original MedEd Energy building, most of it was right here. This building got built successfully over a number of years. And the very original building is this back building that's kind of a gable building that sits up against this. And here's the stack, if you will, that goes up into the air that everybody knows is iconic. So that space in there is this really wonderful volume that we're going to actually input floors to create more gallery space. And so you're going to come into this space and then enter in on axis, almost on axis with that new stack. So you're going to be able to see the base of the new stack and then kind of enter into the overall gallery exhibit. And there's another building that was built later that sits back here, which is its own entity again, which becomes the library space. So the library, which is an ever-growing kind of piece for the York History Center, this is also showing the first floor, but that's also a 2-story experience. So you're going to walk into that space, and it's going to be a 2-story volume that goes up. And then more support space that sits back here, so mechanical space, and then a potential future addition for very much needed storage space for the York History Center. The basement of the existing warehouse building that sits up on Philadelphia Street will become mechanical space and storage space for a lot of the events that will happen within there. And so one of the main kind of core pieces that we have to do within that is just vertical circulation. This building is the buildings are very challenging in the fact that they all have been built at different time periods. They all have different floor elevations. They all have their own structural systems, and we're also now going to come back in and try to infill new structural systems within that support all the new gallery spaces and support new event spaces. But right now, really, when it comes to a new addition, it's really this piece right here with a little bit of a thumb, if you will, back here. So that's really the only thing new that we're building outside of existing structure. If we go up to the second floor, you'll get a little bit more sense of some of the volume, where the main hall, if you will, which is kind of lined on both sides by a steel structure, has some flying bridges that go across. But really, this is a 2-story space. So that main hall that you walk into is going to be roughly about 25 feet clear. So it's going to be a really nice premier kind of event space. And when you walk into the main gallery space, so this is showing the second floor gallery kind of infill pieces, which when they walk through the gallery spaces, you'll get a little better sense of that we're still trying to maintain some height within those spaces as well. So you still get a great sense of that existing building. And then we're starting to show some of the large pieces that come into the space and where that floor needs to be continued to be cut away so we can get really large pieces in the gallery. the front and second floor of the warehouse building will become the new office spaces for the staff. So really nice along Philadelphia. This building really sets up nicely to be kind of really nice office space. But it's also a little bit disconnected from the gallery, so it's the events that go on within the office space versus the gallery. There's a really nice kind of decompression from there. The library, again, there's an opportunity once you come through the gallery on the main floor and then come up the stairs up to the second floor of the gallery and kind of come through. There's a hallway right here, which will be physically separated from the main library space, but it will have points where you can see into it. So in this case, now people can actually see what's happening in the library, maybe see some things going on in there, and hopefully be invited to come into that space. And you can see that there's a hole here is where that becomes still a two-story volume within that space, that people can still read that entire building on the inside without, putting in the whole second floor and really kind of ruining the volume of that building right now. And so, again, here's the smokestack. One of the things that I didn't mention on the main floor is this main hall will have some exhibits within it. And so there are some of the really large kind of pieces, there's spaces for that to happen within there. If we go up to the third floor, this is one of the opportunities that we struggled early trying to kind of understand what it might be, but the idea of having a second event space that's up, so you can see, as Rob talked about earlier, the entire campus. There's a space now when you get above the second floor of the front warehouse building, that once you get up here, you're going to be able to see the entire campus all the way down to Cadorus Creek, because you're going to get elevated and get into the air. The other opportunity is there's the coal bins. So if you go and see the Med Ed building on Pershing, there's a 3-story facade, and up at the very top of that is the coal bins that kind of successfully over time got built and fed everything. And the idea is to create even more gallery space and a unique experience to kind of see what that building is and get up above those coal bins and see into them. And then again, this multi-purpose space up here, the event space, the idea right now is to break that down so that it can be smaller space. It can be a little bit more flexible for the use. It can be used during the day for students that visit, and it can be supported by warming kitchens. And so that event space and the space below can operate simultaneously, hopefully. So there's a lot of opportunity about how this building gets used over time. And I think that's it. If walking through, that was really kind of a quick walkthrough. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Next.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Feldman. I'm the board secretary, as well as part of the overall oversight committee for the project. And we're going to start launching into the design aspect of the project. After a really fun and diverse experience of interviewing over 9 different design exhibit companies, we chose a company known as PRD Group out of Northern Virginia. This is a firm that has countless institutions on its resume, including the National Museum of the Marine Corps, the Museum for the State of Alabama, and one that we are more familiar with here. They did the design for the Seminary Ridge Museum in Gettysburg, which I'm sure many of us have visited. We have had a wonderful experience working with PRD. One of the things that drew us to PRD was their insistence that the community play an important role in helping to inform the design. So over the past year, we have held a series of community meetings throughout York County that have featured discussions on what makes York County unique, discussions around its culture, its heritage and history, and what people think would be desirable in a new York County History Center. So now we are in the design development phase of the exhibit. This will add an additional layer of detail to the exhibit. In this phase, which really just got started within the last month, the work, the stories, the objects, the people, and the events that will highlight the story of York County will be chosen, and the collection will be examined in detail on how to support the stories that we want to tell. At the end of this phase, the exhibit design will be at about 50% completion. The goal is to tell a comprehensive, inclusive, and very engaging story that will connect York County's past to its present, and will showcase York County's impact on a local, a regional, and a national level. So with this new experience, which would be housed within the Med-Ed steam plant, which is a historic building in and of itself, starting with that wonderful smokestack, that will be a prominent feature that will draw people to the new site. The exhibit concept that PRD has put forward will be housed on 2 levels in the steam plant, as was mentioned earlier. This will provide us with about 15,000 square feet for the core exhibit. This will utilize our diverse historic, object, and archival collections and our assets. The exhibit will incorporate multiple styles of learning with interactive and tactile experiences that should engage all age levels. Our visitors will experience the exhibit thematically as opposed to chronologically, and these will be built around 3 major themes: building, growing, and making. And then finally, our visitors will have an experience to share their story, be able to see themselves in York County's past, and be able to share their story with us and have that become part of our collection so that we can be able to incorporate their story into future exhibits. The thematic approach will highlight objects and stories based around their significance, and will highlight a network of connections between the people and places and the effect on the local, regional, national, and international levels. It will not have a linear progression. People will be free to move throughout the core exhibit as their eyes draw them. Within the themes, there will be somewhat of a chronological arrangement. Visitors can explore the things that they find interesting in the order that they desire. This represents the latest in response to audience desires and gives preference to self-directed experiences. Now, Dan's going to talk a little more in detail about the themes. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Dan? Okay.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Dan Rowe, Vice President of Interpretation with the York County History Center, and as Steve mentioned, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail with the core exhibit, its placement in the structure in the steam plant itself, and talk about some of the stories and how some of this interpretation is going to be realized as we're moving forward. As Steve mentioned, we are in the design phase aspect here with the exhibit. So now and through the end of the summer, we'll be working with PRD Group to really refine this to a higher level of detail and have a really solid understanding of just exactly what this experience will be. So we're going to start here on the first floor, and as was mentioned before, the exhibit space is 2 levels, and so here we are on that main first floor. And again, the volume of this building is really unique, so I'll talk a little bit later, but we're able to really maximize some of our larger objects as we're going through. So as Steve mentioned, the three main themes that we're organizing all of the York County history, all of the York County story around starts with the first one being building. And for anybody familiar with our organization, you know we have an extensive collection, not only materials, as well as archival aspects as well. And so we have the opportunity to really maximize those in ways that we were never able to do before, and use this space differently. So starting with building, the building theme will capture York County's experience from its earliest foundations and the role that it's played, not only from building the local community, but also building the national community and playing an impact on a national level. So that would take place right in this area here. This would actually be under the coal bin structure of the old Med-Ed steam plant that was mentioned before. And so in this space, visitors might encounter York County's role during the Revolutionary period, how the Articles of Confederation came to be and were adopted here, highlighting the connections again with the history campus and inviting visitors to see the historic colonial complex just a block down the street. This theme will also highlight many personal stories. So throughout York County history and throughout the exhibit design, we recognize that objects are just one part of this story that we're telling, putting the people behind these stories, the events that took place and how they were impacting what was taking place and how that came to be is really the goal. So you might encounter a story of Jeanette Zinn, who served in World War I as a Red Cross nurse. You might learn about some of the African American families that made their way to York County as part of the Great Migration in the 1920s. Although these stories are not told in ways that we wish they could be currently, this really gives us the opportunity to expand on those. At the same time, we recognize that building a community is hard work and it's an ongoing process and ever-changing. So there's opportunities to explore what we would think of as more difficult history. And that might be accomplished through some multimedia programs and what we're conceptually calling a renewal theater, where folks can have a chance to explore some of the challenges that we're facing, not only historically, but in current times as well. And so that would all be incorporated here in this first level through the building theme. Also based here on the first floor is our growing theme. And so transitioning a little bit out of the building of a community and helping the nation grow, growing gets into some of the oldest industries here in York County, including when you think of growing, agriculture, of course, still a major industry. So that is located here on the other side, again in this main space, and it's a little bit hard to tell here. We'll have some different views later on. This is a A.B. Farquhar thresher that we currently have on display at the Ag and Industrial Museum next to a steam engine, so highlighting some of the changes in technology and how things were taking place and improving throughout the 1800s into the 1900s. But the other aspect with this growing theme is that as this industry develops, when you think about agriculture, you think about markets, you think about trade networks, you think about communication, not only locally but regionally, highlighting, again, York County's role as this hub, networking to different locations and encountering different people. This will all be incorporated here. Also on the first floor, this was mentioned a little bit earlier as well, we have one of our more iconic large-scale historic items, the ammonia compressor built by York Manufacturing in the early 1900s. And so one of the first things we definitely made sure we could do with this new building was incorporate those iconic pieces that we have. So that's spec'd into the space at this point. And this would be an introduction to our final theme of making. And again, when you think about York County, the diverse manufacturing history, the industries, nearly countless items made within our county borders, all of that will be incorporated. And that will actually slide to the second floor. And so again, that's that second level space where you'll have actually some really unique vantage points as a visitor looking down onto the first level. And again, if you think of our ammonia compressor over here, it'll actually come up through that height, so you'll have a eye-level view of this really large machine that, again, right now, visitors don't have that experience. So again, up on this level, a few more of our larger pieces. We have our Conestoga wagon that a lot of folks know of as one of our bigger pieces that was on display at one time here at the Historical Society Museum, as well as the currently at the Agricultural and Industrial Museum. This area will also highlight, again, some broader themes. So if you think about York's impact, especially with industry, you might be thinking about the York Plan. So that will be highlighted in this space. And as visitors come through this area, they'll exit down a corridor that will actually take them by the library and archives and put them in what we're calling the Your Story area to wrap up the exhibit as a whole. And this is where we're inviting visitors to leave their own story for us. So this might be an opportunity for them to take a photo. They might have a chance to leave us with a short oral history. And these stories can be saved by us. They can be used in a lot of different formats moving forward. And it's allowing everybody to see themselves in York County's history. I do just want to touch on the macro objects, as I mentioned, as we went through pretty quickly here. We do have the space to get some of these bigger pieces in. And as far as the interpretation, the goal is not to just display these larger pieces, but really give folks an understanding of why they were built, how they worked, also understand perhaps a little bit more about the people that were using them and what impact that may have had as far as the products they were producing for the average citizen at that time period. So really, again, that comprehensive story is the overarching goal through these themes. And with this thematic approach, we can tell a lot of history in a really different way than we're able to currently. I'm actually going to turn it over back to Steve to talk a little bit more about our technology.
Okay, thanks, Dan. If you've gone to any new museums recently, you know as well as I do that interactive technology plays an important role in creating an experience and a body of knowledge for the visitor. We're planning to use state-of-the-art technology that will enhance and augment the actual displays and the stories that we tell. The History Center's library and archives houses incredible resources that we will then be able to allow our visitors to interact with through this technology. To provide this content, we're planning to use digital components that will feature the personal stories, photographs, as well as digitized objects that cannot be displayed all at once, or with more details connecting visitors to the resources that we have. So for example, if somebody is particularly interested in the Conestoga wagon, they will be able to not only see the Conestoga wagon, but they will be able to interact with additional information that we have in the archives about how the Conestoga wagons were used. The guiding principles behind the design process is to use technology judiciously and with a purpose, while at the same time recognizing that traditional methodologies of touch and feel and hearing and seeing are very important and equally effective. The main way that we're going to be using technology in sort of a macro way is through the use of very tall towers that will have changing interactive displays on them. And there will be one tower for each of our main themes located around the displays. We have a graphic of one of the towers right here in this picture. You see that the tower extends up over the first floor and can also be seen on the second floor as well. So technology will be greatly enhanced in the new museum's experience. The other thing that we'll have just inside the front door, this isn't a technology thing, but this is incredibly important to being able to bring a diverse experience to our visitors, is that inside the front door and to the right will be a changing gallery. It will be available for traveling exhibits as well as exhibits that we are planning from our own archives, available right off the lobby, to give us the opportunity to tell more stories on a rotating basis. And as I said, to have a space that's very desirable for traveling exhibits from other museums. So that will be a very, very excellent addition to our offerings as well. That will be about 2,000 square feet, and will not only be an opportunity for traveling exhibits, but it will allow us to invite other local communities and organizations to bring their displays in as well. Dan has a treat for us here as far as a better look at some of the early designs ideas of what the exhibit might look like.
So we went through this design verbally. What you're looking at now is a conceptual video done by PRD Group to give you a better sense visually of the feel of the space. So again, here we are on the first level, taking a look at the building theme and the growing theme. So you can see some of the larger objects as you go through the steam track engine to the left, the Phineas Davis replica locomotive that we have on display at the Ag and Industrial Museum, the A-frame in the background. The other thing to note as you're taking a look here, not only are these large objects highlighted, but we have the ability for our smaller objects to intermix into the space throughout this area. So you can see some casework there in the back left corner as folks are going through. You're getting a sense of some of the graphics, some of the interpretive media that might be used. We're going to slide up here to the second level with the making theme and the your story theme. So again, there you have a smaller case example. You can see some interactives over there to the right. There's the Conestoga wagon, of course, with a reader rail and some multimedia possibilities as well. And as we slide around the corner here, you'll get a sense of, again, the second floor and the unique vantage point you'll have with some of the objects as you take a look at, again, the top of the ammonia compressor there, just for that visual here from the second level. At this point, it's going to slide over to the Your Story. So again, this is the space where we're inviting our visitors to tell their own story, leave us with information, whether it be that photograph or that oral history or something along those lines that we can share, that they can share. Again, we're going to pan away here to the outside of the building that I already had a pretty good look at before. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Joan.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Joan Mummert. I'm the president of the York County History Center. As you can tell, we've done a lot of work on the building, work on the exhibit designs, and moving in both of those categories from design to design development, or from concept to design development. We started this process just over a year ago in January 2017 on those two activities. And it's taken to this point to be able to give you some really great renderings, some really terrific video on concepts. Now we're poised, and we actually have started the really hard work of putting meat on the bones for the exhibit content. So let me just catch you up to where we are at this point. We're here in 2018, so a little over a year later, and we, as I just mentioned, exhibit design and development, building design and development. So what happens next? Well, we actually start the process for RFPs to get a construction firm at risk on board. That process begins mid-March, mid to late March. We hope to have someone on board or a group on board by May. The RFP for civil engineering will be released at the same time, also looking for a May timeframe. We are, as Patty Rooney said earlier, applying for historic tax credits. That application goes in May. We hope to hear in August, and that would be a $2 million infusion to the organization. And we have a financial partner that's interested in taking those tax credits. The new market tax credits we are pursuing as well. We hope to hear by the fall. That's $2 to $3 million combined. That looks like $5 million. We continue to pursue grants. We have over $1 million out right now in requests, so we feel very optimistic that this project will reach its $20 million goal. It will take a long time. We actually have fast-forwarded this time to, or compressed the time in a way that you've not seen another nonprofit museum do this. So we're very, very pleased and proud with how far we've come in such a short period of time. I know that many folks are interested in what's happening with the collections. One of the things that we've been promising our community is that eventually we will receive accreditation for our collections for the entire institution. That is a long process. That process is, we're starting to work through an inventory right now, so understanding everything that we have, 90,000 three-dimensional items, that does not include photographs, books, or family files. That's a much larger, bordering on 400,000 items in those collections. So let's celebrate a new year and go into 2019. We believe in the spring that our construction will begin, that the exhibit, the media designs that Steve referenced will be developed at that time, and the production of the exhibit elements will start at that time. Again, we will continue to work through the inventory for our collections, and we have to move, so we'll start packing. And lastly, in 2020, so we've gone 2 years in advance, we finish the construction, we start exhibit installation, and then we start moving. There's a two-phase move. One phase goes into the steam plant for the new site. The second phase goes to the Agricultural and Industrial Museum. Eventually, this building will be emptied and put up for sale. We believe at this point in time, depending on how funding comes in, that we will be opening late November 2020. And you can bet we will have a good party, and you all will be invited. So just a few notes about this calendar. We could not be at this place without an amazing array of people. Our amazing team in-house, our incredible staff who have helped guide this process forward, our incredible board of directors, our volunteers, warehouse design, PRD group, and a whole host of others. The capital campaign committee who got us to this place, raising $6 million, overreaching our goal by at least by $1 million at this point. So where do we go from here? We could use help. We could use volunteer help in the collections, helping us catalog or inventory. We can use help in the many different committees that we'll be working through in the next few years to help us chart our new course. Right now, it's just working on the building and getting the exhibits developed, but what comes next, programs, activities, all types of things for the future, so stay tuned, and thank you so much. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Rob for questions. Thank you.
Well, as I said, thank you all for coming. We're happy to answer any questions for anyone in the audience who's here with us. For those of you who are sitting with us, we've had 120 plus people join us on Facebook. I think there's probably about 20 who are still on. If any have questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Questions about the design, questions about the timeline, questions about continuing to raise the rest of the funds to make this happen. Any questions? Yes.
I saw on the Stephen History has some sort of tie-in, and I saw a round table is on one design drawing. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, we can comment on it. Here's what I'll tell you is that Steam into History has their own projects they're working on, their own fundraising. We know that they would love to be able to bring the train into the city and have a turntable. We would love for them to do that. Theirs is a separate project for ours, but what we've done in our master planning for the campus is to leave room for them to make that possible. So that image that we showed of the campus shows that we've left room that if they can accomplish their goals, then we could have that train pull up right in front of the History Center and have a turntable. And we hope that at some point that happens. And we've planned to make sure that let me put it this way, we're making sure that we're not going to keep them from doing that. We're leaving room so that if they're successful, it will happen. Thank you. Any other questions? Any others on Facebook? All right. Well, thank you for your patience while we got through some technical difficulties. Obviously, it took us a little longer. That probably hurt us with some questions on Facebook. We appreciate all of you coming, and we know, thank you for your help. We know many of you are already giving us your help, and we'll keep pushing towards our goal. All right. Thank you.